Hello, European and Australian friends, and welcome back to the ESC Kelp Eurovision podcast, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Matt, and I am your host. So today is actually the 17th of April, and the grand final of Eurovision 2025, as you may know, is taking place on the 17th of May, and so that means that we're officially 1 month away. So I thought today there's probably no better time to discuss who could win Eurovision this year. I guess I should preface it by saying that there are many factors at play here that will influence this, and particularly staging and running order. And obviously, we don't know either of those things at this stage. But we're going to go through the countries I've got sort of some main ones I think are the main contenders to win, and also a few dark horses which we'll briefly touch on. But these are sort of influenced. Well, I was going to say they're influenced by my own personal opinion and the odds, but all of the ones I'm considering main contenders are in the top 10 of the odds anyway, so it doesn't really matter about that. But speaking of the odds, we'll start straight away with Sweden, who are obviously number one in the odds, and the number one in the odds by quite a margin. I think it's 11% at the time of recording, but obviously the odds change quite a lot, so that might be different by the time this goes out. It should hopefully go out on the day that I'm recording it, though, on the 17th, so they shouldn't have changed too much. Obviously, I think Sweden is the nailed-on televote winner. You could maybe argue that Finland could challenge, but I think Sweden just has such a universal appeal, but it's a universal appeal for the televote. So I don't see a world in which Sweden doesn't win the televote. And obviously, winning the televote means that you are definitely in the conversation to win, and it would just depend on how the juries respond to you. Obviously, Kai've got it's a really polished performance and really polished staging, and the juries like that sort of thing. They'll reward that, and also I almost don't like to say this, but it is sort of true that it's Sweden, and Sweden always does well with the juries. So right now, I'm sort of living in a world where we're top five with the juries. Um, and obviously, I think number one with the televote, which is obviously a great position to be in if you want to win. And so that's going to depend on the lead that the countries above it in the jury vote. How big is that lead? Because if that lead isn't big enough, if Sweden is sort of third or fourth, which is where I'd probably imagine them third, fourth, or fifth in the jury, maybe even second, you could even argue. But if Sweden are there and they're close to number one, then they've won the televote, they'll win it. But if the country that we're going to talk about next has got a huge lead in the juries, then it's sort of it's more interesting, because you have to remember that the televote at the moment with various global events, there are really heavy sums of points going to Ukraine and Israel. And so there are less televotes to play for, which is why the jury sort of has more weight than it should do in the 50-50 system. And that's obviously why the last 2 years we have had two jury winners. And Loreen did come second in the televote, but Nemo only came fifth in the televote. And I guess it's that sort of similar style Nemo result that Austria might be hoping for, who are currently second in the odds. Now, to me, Austria feels like a jury winner. Obviously, we know Sergio Hyen is staging it. We're expecting something very impressive. The sort of little bits we've heard sound really promising. We know JJ has got great vocals. We know he can sing. So this is definitely a contender to win the jury, but that's not me saying anything new. That's what everyone's saying. So then I guess if we are imagining that this is winning the jury, again, that puts it in the winner conversation, just like winning the televote does. And the question then falls on the other: how well is it going to do with the televote? Now, people have compared this to Nemo last year, obviously, and they only came fifth in the televote. And the songs have been compared. I don't really find the songs similar, but the songs have been compared, and people are saying, oh, if Nemo was only able to get fifth, then JJ's not going to do better than that. Well, I don't know, because I think JJ's song does have a lot of televote appeal. I think it will probably be top five in the televote, I imagine. So I don't see see why the televote would drag this down. I don't think the televote will drag this down, which is why it feels like it could definitely win. Um, so I believe that it can still do well with the televote, but jury is its obvious strength, so it needs to get a decent lead in those juries to make up for where it might fall behind in the televote against Sweden and those sorts of countries. Um, but that's not to say that they're not going to have it easy. No, sorry, that's not to say that they are going to have it easy in the jury, because there's plenty of countries challenging for that. I don't think Sweden would win the jury, but Sweden are going to be up there. But the main jury challenger that I'm seeing at the moment is France, who are third in the odds at the moment. Now, I'm sort of seeing France right now. If I'm thinking about how France would win, it feels like a sort of compromise winner like Netherlands 2019 or Ukraine 2016, where they both of them actually came second in both juries and televotes. So they didn't win one, but they were able to do well in both that then sort of took them to the win. And actually that's interesting because a lot of people are saying this year that the televote feels really split and the jury feels like it'll be split, or like they'll be very different, so the jury will vote very differently to the televote, in which case one that does well in both could easily win. And France feels like the lead contender at the moment, I would say, to do this. This could easily come second with the juries. It could even win the juries, which puts slightly less pressure on its televote. I think it could be sort of second to fifth with the televote, which would give it a really good shot if it comes sort of second or first with the juries. And I actually think that this is a lot more televote appeal than people might give it credit for. It's heartfelt, it's a sincere French ballad sung about sort of being a mother and also sort of Luan's mother. And that's going to resonate with a lot of people. And I think it's important to remember that France came fourth with the televote last year. And to me, Mon Amour felt. I understand the televote is sort of quite grand, but it didn't feel very sincere to me. And this feels really sincere. So I would maybe even say that France could do better in the televote this year. I don't know. Obviously, I think running order would play a big part in that because France had such a good running order last year. But we'll see. But I feel like Luan could do better in the televote. Apologies for the interruption. That wasn't planned. I think we'd finished talking about France. Yeah, basically they're a very strong contender. I think they'll do well in both the juries and the televote, which naturally gives them a chance. So we will move on to Finland. We're going to talk about next, who are sixth in the odds. I suppose the headline for Finland is that they are another potential televote winner. Sweden just feels more likely to me. I'd be surprised if Finland won the televote, but you can't rule it out at this stage. So we're imagining this is going to do well in the televote, even if it doesn't win it, which again leaves us with the juries. I think that Erica's got quite a star quality. You really saw that in the UMK staging, which is really impressive staging, and they'll only elevate that at Eurovision. So the staging is going to help the televote and the juries, obviously. But you really see that in the UMK performance that she feels like a star. It feels like Erica's concert, and that I think the juries are really going to respect that actually. To what extent they respect it, though, is going to determine how this does. Because this is definitely top 5 in the televote, which means that the juries are basically going to be the decider. Because if she gets top 5 in the jury, she's a chance. Top 3, and I'd say she's got a good chance. But if she's outside the top 5 of those juries, which is possible, I can't really say at the moment how this is going to do with the juries, but if she's outside the top 5 of the juries, then it's over, I would say, and she's not going to win. So Finland, to me, seem a little bit less likely, just because I don't think they're going to. So obviously you've got Austria and Sweden, who right now I'm going to say Austria winning juries and Finland are winning the televote. So that immediately puts them into the sort of puts them into the potential to win the winners' conversation. And then you've got France, who are not who could win the juries maybe, but maybe not likely. But they're going to do. I would say they would do top 5 in both, which then puts them into the question. But Finland, I know they'll do top 5 in the televote, but I'm not 100% convinced they will definitely get top 5 in the jury. I'm leaning towards yes, but because we we don't know that they will definitely get top 5 in that jury, that's what sort of makes it a little bit less likely to me. The Netherlands are actually fifth in the odds, so they're doing slightly better than Finland. But I decided to talk about Claude after Erica because to me his chance feels slimmer. His chance at winning feels slimmer. I guess this is a similar route to France and even Finland in the sense that it would probably win neither jury nor televote, but would come up the middle to win. But I would say that the Netherlands have a lower chance than those countries, that's France and Finland, because both France and Finland have some potential to win the jury, which would be France obviously, or the televote, which would be Finland. But I don't see a world in which the Netherlands win either. There's a chance France could win the jury. There's a small chance Finland could win the televote. To me, there's no chance the Netherlands are going to win the jury, and there's no chance the Netherlands are going to win the televote. But obviously, that doesn't mean they can't win. Like I mentioned earlier, Netherlands 2019, Ukraine 2016, both they came second in both. But I'm not necessarily definitely seeing that scenario with the Netherlands because I think maybe they would come fifth in both or maybe sort of fourth in the jury and seventh in the televote, that sort of thing. So I don't think I'm seeing this quite as much as a winner as maybe some people are, as maybe the odds suggest. But you definitely can't rule it out at this stage. We haven't seen staging, running order, any of that stuff that I keep on mentioning. So you definitely can't rule them out. But I would say that it's unlikely, in my personal opinion, at this stage. And then there's Czechia, who are currently ninth in the odds, and I think they might have been sort of 13th or 14th at one point. So this has moved up since pre-parties. And I think people are now starting to see the vision that I'm seeing more. So I guess it's ninth in the odds. Many people would say this is a dark horse, but I actually think it's up with the front runners, which might be controversial, but who knows? Adonis obviously has an amazing voice, that the juries are going to love that voice. But I can see this doing really well with the juries. I mean, I actually wouldn't rule this out as a jury winner, potentially. I don't think it's likely, but it feels like it's going to be top 5 in the juries, definitely. And it could win. The staging could be really like mind blowing, and it could really win. Um, And actually, the dance break, while I don't personally like it, seeing it performed on the stage and it seems to fit, and it does give it a lot more televote appeal, I would say. So this could do well in the televote, and it's going to do well in the jury. I don't. It's not going to win. I mean, maybe it could win the jury, but I don't think it's definitely not winning the televote. So it would be a sort of Netherlands situation and France situation, maybe where it comes up the middle, and also Finland, I guess. It doesn't win either, but it comes up the middle to win. But actually, I'm talking about Czechia after the Netherlands because the odds favour the Netherlands over Czechia. But I would maybe even say Czechia are more likely to win than the Netherlands, just because I think the Netherlands are playing it a bit more safe. And so it's obviously Netherlands is a really well produced sort of pop song. And it's really good, but it's quite safe. And so that's why I would say maybe fifth in jury and fifth in televote. Whereas Czechia being a little bit more daring, it's still really well produced pop song, but it feels a little bit more daring, which is why I wonder maybe Czechia might do really well in the juries and they might do really well in the televote. So I'd actually argue Czechia are more likely to win than the Netherlands, despite being behind them in the odds. You could even maybe say Czechia are more likely to win than Finland. That might be controversial, but I may be living in that world where Czechia are going to do better then. Well, maybe Czechia won't end up doing better, but I think in terms of winner conversation, maybe Czechia are higher than Finland. But I guess on balance, maybe you'd say they're quite similar. So I do think that I think Czechia is sort of being left behind in the conversation a bit, and I think it needs to be brought back up because it's got a real chance. And it was when Adonis was announced, people were saying Czechia could win, and then I think maybe the song didn't quite have the impact people were hoping for, and so it fell in the odds a bit, and people aren't really talking about it anymore. But the pre-parties are slowly sort of bringing it back up, and I think when we see the rehearsal clip and the staging, the pictures from the first rehearsal, I think that this is going to this is going to go a bit higher in the odds. But equally, you could say that the same is going to happen to the ones that are currently above it in the odds. So It's a bit of a balancing act, but Czechia definitely shouldn't be ruled out, and to me, they are up there with the front runners rather than the dark horses. The dark horses, who we are going to briefly talk about now, I think. Um, I guess the dark horses are potential winners, but I would say they're unlikely as winners. For one reason or another, which I'll get into. So I wouldn't completely rule them out, but like I would for the other countries that are not the front runners and are not the dark horses. But it would be unlikely. I'd be surprised if one of these won. The first one is obviously probably no surprise, is Albania. This is a fan favourite, and it's got that sort of underdog story which gives it legs. That obviously did wonders for Baby Lasagna last year, winning the televote, coming second overall. Obviously, an amazing result, and that was a huge underdog story. So people do like an underdog. People want to vote for an underdog. And Albania, I would say, is that sort of underdog last year. This year rather, but I don't think it quite has the. It doesn't have the obvious path to victory like Croatia did last year, because Croatia was the televote winner. But I don't see Albania winning the televote. Albania won't win the televote, and they won't win the juries. So obviously they would have to come up the middle. But why I don't see that as being particularly likely is because I'm not sure that this is something that the juries are going to sort of flock behind en masse. If you want to be in the winner conversation, you need to be getting those sort of 7s, 8s, 10s, and 12s from the juries really consistently. And I don't see the juries treating Albania like that. I don't see Albania constantly being at the top of those juries. It might not even make top 10 of the juries, which is, I think, staging would come down, but the song itself doesn't feel like something the juries would love. But maybe the juries are influenced by fan opinion, and obviously the fans really love Albania, so it's difficult to say, probably. Obviously it's going to have a good televote, but again, I don't think it's going to get close to winning the televote. So if it's not going to win the televote, and it's probably not going to get close to winning the televote, and it's definitely not going to win the jury, and it might not even be in the top 10 of the jury, depending on how things go, then you can't. I just don't think you can say Albania has got a chance of winning. But I think the ninth in the odds, are they? They're a fan favourite. You can't completely rule it out, but based on what I've said about how I see this going in the televote and the jury in particular, I don't see them winning. But who knows? Stranger things have happened. And then you've got Ukraine, who is interesting because I haven't included Israel as a dark horse. And that's because I think that they'll get high televote like they did last year, but I don't think the juries are gonna pay any attention to Israel this year. So Israel to me has got no chance of winning. Now Ukraine, I think, is also going to get a high televote. Obviously, it's different reasons to Israel, but I think Ukraine is going to get a high televote, and they're going to do better than in the televote than people predict. I think, not to get political, but certain things in the US means that support for Ukraine is really high in Europe at the moment. I would say, and so I think there is going to be a big sort of swell televote support for Ukraine, which I think a lot of people are underestimating. But I think where this is held back is the juries. I don't see the juries rewarding this anywhere near enough for it to be a winner. But it does sort of have that unique, quite it is quite unique. So I don't think the juries are going to blanket. But I don't know if it would get more than a sort of 100 points from the jury, and you'd need a lot more than that to win. So I think the juries are holding Ukraine back, but do not underestimate their televote this year. It's also, it feels like even if you remove sort of various factors, I feel like the televote would respect this anyway. But obviously they are going to get a boost. You can't deny that they are going to get a boost, and it might take them into the top 5, which I think a lot of people are sort of thinking won't happen, but it might take them into the top 5. So watch this space, I guess. But they are definitely top 10. So anyone saying that Ukraine will not come top 10 is wrong. And I suppose maybe I've talked about a few unpopular opinions today, but I think the most unpopular opinion by far that I have is the final dark horse I'm going to talk about. who are currently sitting in 21st in the odds, so it would be a ridiculous shock if they were to win. But that would be Lithuania. So just on a sort of first level, some people think Lithuania won't qualify from semi-final two. That's ridiculous. They've got a great slot. They are closing the first half. They've got loads of diaspora countries. It's a great song, great vocals. It stands out by a million miles. I don't remember if I even said diaspora, but they've got the diaspora. So there's no way they don't qualify. And then we get to the final. I should say this is just like a sort of last little mention. I don't think they're going to win it. It's extremely unlikely that they're going to win. But there is in my mind just a tiny, tiny little chance that they could do it. And it would be an ultimate sort of underdog dark horse story. But even if we're not thinking about the winners conversation, this is just a dark horse to do well. People don't think this is going to do that well. I do. I think this is probably top 10. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. You would have thought that Lithuania last year would be top 10 and they came 14th, I think. But running order really messed them up, which I guess is why running order and staging is so important in this winners conversation, because it can make or break you. Not that Lithuania would have won last year, but they would have got top 10 if they'd come a lot later. So anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent. So like I said, this is going to do a lot better in general than people think. And there's a tiny, tiny chance, in my mind anyway, probably no one else's, but in my mind, there's a tiny chance that this could win. And why is that? Well, it's such a unique song, and the word that comes to mind when I think of this song is special. Musically speaking, it is so special. And I think the juries are meant to be sort of industry experts. And I think the juries are going to look at something that's so unique, stands out so much, is clearly really well put together, and it's really emotional in many ways. And I think they're going to reward that. Now, whether that's top 5, I don't know. It should be top 10. I can't really call it at the moment, but I just don't see the juries blanking this. And if they do, then it's a travesty, because they shouldn't blank this at all. But then when it comes to the televote, I also think it's going to do well in the televote. And I think that's because a lot of the time, I think the way that televote goes comes down to how people feel on the night of the final. And I don't want to make this gloomy, but the world is not exactly like the most happy place at the moment. There's a lot of bad things going on. And I think a lot of people feel quite miserable and pessimistic and gloomy about sort of the current global situation. And this song captures that mood, and this song sort of represents that mood in many ways. And so if you're sat there at home on the night of the final and you're feeling, and you're feeling sort of, this is maybe sort of a bit of unity in Europe and Australia, I suppose. This is maybe a bit of unity, this contest. And then you get to Lithuania and you hear it and you think, actually, do you know what? This encompasses how I feel. And people may just well pick up the phone for that. So I don't know how this is going to do with the televote. I think it's going to come top 10 in both, but I could be completely wrong. But just part of me is in my head is thinking, do you know what? Maybe Lithuania is just really going to hit a nerve that a lot of people are feeling at the moment. And so that's why I think there is a tiny chance that this could win. But again, I don't think it's at all likely, but I just wanted to throw it out there as a possibility. Maybe I'd even put a bet on it, but I don't really bet, but maybe. I guess that brings us to the end of all the countries that I was going to talk about today. So I guess maybe I should conclude with sort of my thoughts. I think, from my perspective, I think the odds are largely right on this one. Sweden are obviously number one. We mentioned they're 11% ahead of Austria. Sweden feels like the most likely winners to me, which is interesting because obviously they won 2023. They hosted last year. Are they going to want to host again? Presumably in Stockholm, or because Kaja from Finland, maybe Finland might host. There's questions there, but obviously they haven't won yet, so we don't need to worry about that yet. But to me, Sweden feels the most likely, just because I'm sure they're going to win the televote, and I think they're probably top 3 in the jury. Because it's so polished and it's sort of got that Swedish flair. that sort of Swedish precision and polish, like I keep on saying. So to me, Sweden feels the most likely, and then I think it probably is Austria and France are the other two that I could see doing it. Um, yeah, I would probably say Austria is more likely than France. I would say in that order, I think that the winner will either be Sweden, Austria, or France. If I had to personally choose, and then some of the obviously I don't think any of the dark horses that we mentioned, Albania, Ukraine, Lithuania, I don't think any of them are probably going to win. Uh, so you'd sort of take them out, which then would just leave us with Finland, Netherlands, and Czechia. And out of those three, I'd rule out the Netherlands, to be honest. And then Finland and Czechia, I could definitely see. So basically, I'm saying from the countries we've talked about today, Sweden, Austria, France, Finland, and Czechia could win. So that's me taking out the Netherlands, Albania, Ukraine, and Lithuania. Those are the ones we spoke about. But if I had to pick who I thought at this stage was going to win, I would say Sweden. So maybe start booking those Stockholm hotels so you could get them cheap. That's all I would say. I don't know if I'll be there or not, but who knows. But I think that does bring us to the end of things today. Discussing the winners. I guess we talked about sort of paths to victory, things like that, how each country might go about winning. But that was a lot of fun today. So thank you very much if you listened to the end. And I hope to see you in another ESC Kelp Eurovision podcast. Goodbye.